Alright, so I've got some criticisms on my mind about WWE. And one of them has to do with something that I kind of sort of feared was going to happen, and it did happen, and it's happening now every week. When I first heard that SmackDown was going to be moving to 3 hours, I was not happy because a 3 hour televised wrestling show is very, very long. And I basically was worried that with a 3 hour Raw and a 3 hour SmackDown, it's too much. Especially since, for me in particular, Fridays are a very busy work day for me because that's when I am most active on Geekdom 101, or at least for the next month. But that's just me. Even if I wasn't active, 3 hours is a lot. And so the first 3 hour SmackDown, the very first episode that was 3 hours, which involved the Tiffany Stratton cash in, and there was a lot of really good angles on that show. I enjoyed it. I actually really liked it. I liked that the angles actually had more time to breathe, and it worked. And as I've said before, I'm not against doing a 3 hour television special. Like, you know, how back in the day, way back in the day, if you remember, they used to do the 3 hour Raws only as specials back when it was 2 hours, like the old school Raws or the draft episodes. It wasn't until 2012 that Raw went to 3 hours. Now, speaking of Raw, the show has been right around 2.5 hours, maybe 2 hours and 40 minutes every single week because unlike television with Netflix, you don't have to fill out the whole hour. So you're going to have shorter Raws than the 3 hours. And it makes for a tighter show, it makes for a better show. And I have enjoyed Raw on most weeks outside of the first episode. See, it's very funny, coincidentally enough, that the first 3 hour SmackDown I loved, and the first Raw on Netflix I did not like. And I've talked about all the reasons why, in other videos. But with SmackDown, man, this 3 hour show is very, very long and it's very tiring. For the past few weeks, I've been watching SmackDown and literally fighting to stay awake. I don't know if it's because Roman's not there or if it's because Cody's not there every week, or maybe the angles that they have going on aren't interesting me just yet. But SmackDown has been a drag at 3 hours. And like I said, I was worried this might happen, and it certainly is happening. SmackDown, I think, really benefited from being the 2 hour show when Raw was three because it was tighter and they were able to give us more things that mattered. Now, when you watch the show, there's an awful lot of filler, a lot of, just things that could have been, I think, executed better. But the issue is it has to be 3 hours every week because of the deal with Netflix. So this past Friday, SmackDown was slow. I mean, this show was slow. And I remember just a couple weeks ago, I'm watching it with a group, and I was like, this is the main event, right? And it was around 9:45 ish, because for some reason it slipped my mind that that SmackDown was 3 hours. And when I realized that it wasn't, I was like, oh my God, another hour of this. It should not be 3 hours, and it drags when it is. And then so even the last couple weeks, I've been straight up falling asleep. Look, I really like Jacob Fatu. I think Jacob Fatu has like the whole package. I mean, this guy is a phenomenal character, tremendously athletic for a guy who is a larger fellow. Great talker, great charisma. He's kind of what the WWE needs because he really does sort of understand how to connect, I think, way better than Solo Sikoa. I feel like Solo Sikoa was, yeah, not a great tribal chief, but I could see Jacob Fatu being a great tribal chief. I still enjoy watching LA Knight and Punishment Martinez, aka Damian Priest. Tiffany Stratton as the women's champion is fine. But even though they added those two Intercontinental and U.S. women's titles, it's kind of just been in limbo. And it's just the show drags, man. The show drags. I think I would probably still watch it over Dynamite because Dynamite is a drag every single week with its 20-minute unnecessary matches and just very sort of snooty way of the presentation. But man, these 3 hour SmackDowns got to go, man. And I know, listen, I know that in July they're going back to 2 hours. I wish it was sooner, but I know they're going to go back to 2 hours. And hopefully they'll do like from July to December, 2 hour SmackDown. And then from January to June, 3. Even though I wish it was more like if you're going to do 3 hour SmackDowns on the road to WrestleMania, I understand. So like if you're going to do SmackDown 3 hours from, let's say, January or even late December, maybe like the last show of the year, all the way to WrestleMania to April, I would be fine with that. I really would. But man, these past few weeks, not that the show's been bad, but the 3 hour, it just doesn't connect. Raw, when it was 3 hours, for some reason I felt was easier to watch. But not every week. I'm talking about specifically during the Triple H era. Because if you go back to the Vince McMahon era, 3 hour Raws were just, I mean, my God. I would rather be doing anything else on some of those episodes. People, I think, forget just how cringe Vince's Raws were. And AEW Dynamite's kind of becoming that. Here we have a guy, Tony Khan, who does not listen to... he doesn't listen to anybody in the business that has more experience than him, and he also doesn't even listen to his own audience because they were complaining about that 12-man collision tag, and he did it anyways. They want the belt off of Moxley. They still keep pushing him. He just doesn't listen. He just does not listen. So it's like Vince. In the mid-2010s when he was trying to cram Roman Reigns down everyone's throat, and Roman was rejected for several years. Roman didn't even get accepted until the Bloodline era, which Vince McMahon did start. So you have to credit him creatively with that. But Triple H took it and threw in characters like a Sami Zayn, threw in like Drew McIntyre's beef with Roman. Obviously Cody coming over created that story, and the push of Solo. So I think they've done a good job in continuing the Bloodline after Vince is gone, but those Raws were horrible. And SmackDown now, albeit not as bad, it's still just a very, very long show. So what do you think? Have you enjoyed SmackDown the past few weeks? Be honest. If you have, great. Nothing wrong with that. If you haven't, let me know why. It's not that the show is just terrible. It's just way, way too long and not as tight. So those are my thoughts.